if I might just refer to an earlier question, it was in relation to local New Zealand politics. This might be a question for you, Jason. A student was wondering to what extent they should try and become familiar with New Zealand politics, or MMP, if that's going to provide a point of discussion or a bridge to a conversation with local students.
Okay, yeah, it's an interesting question, and I guess my answer would be that if you're interested in politics, then sure, MMP is endless discussion, right? there's basically every flavor of political persuasion in New Zealand, and people love to talk about it, but only some people. So it's really only if you're interested in politics, then there's plenty to talk about, particularly at an election. And people have developed a culture in New Zealand where it's very normal to talk with, for example, someone who's a libertarian versus someone who's very conservative, can still have a good conversation. Also, on the second part of that question was about whether or not one should pretend to know about it if they don't, I guess. And my view on that is always, I guess, comes from my experience when many foreigners in Taipei would pretend they knew, and then by pretending they knew, they never learned. And so, you know, people are not expected to know everything about everyone. In fact, as someone who's a teacher, I'm always of the view that it's really important to be curious, and to, when you don't know something, that's an opportunity to have a conversation and to learn more. And, you know, about awareness, as Sue was talking about it, is to be aware, then one has to learn. But where should one learn? You know, you should follow your curiosity and your interests, and then you'll find people who share similar interests. And if you share similar interests, that can also be a bridge to break down some of those cross-cultural potential issues. So, for example, in Taiwan, I learned to love history, and I also I really like science fiction. So I like talking when I go to China now about Liu Cixin's science fiction. All those types of things it creates a common point to talk about. But yeah, follow your interest rather than pretend.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. And so that would be an important principle, you think, is to be looking to be following your interests and passions, so that you're more likely to have more in common with a New Zealand or local student who has the same interest and passion, whether it's badminton or online gaming or basketball or chess. So join a local club, whether it's on campus or in the community. And would you say that most of the time clubs are usually pretty keen for new members or for volunteers?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, every club loves members, and you know, those clubs and those memberships are built on a joined passion for one particular thing. And so, you know, if you share that passion, then I think that's a great opportunity to get on well and build relationships.
Got a question here in relation to the tall poppy syndrome of New Zealanders, as I've read in some sources. Is this phenomenon true? And how do Asians behave more appropriately in order to excel while not annoying others? I think the tall poppy syndrome is almost like the shadow side of our value of equality. We might feel a little bit uncomfortable. I think the tall poppy syndrome is also related to modesty in New Zealand. So it's okay to be successful, but it's not okay so much to blow your trumpet or to show off your success or your wealth too obviously. So that's probably a little bit of the tall poppy. And yeah, possibly some New Zealanders probably need to learn to congratulate and applaud the success of others more than they do. maybe it's not something to be overly sensitive to, but just to be aware of. And it's probably different within different communities because, you know, as was first mentioned by Sue in the beginning, we have a diverse range of communities in New Zealand, particularly in Auckland. So it might hold true for one ethnic community more than another. There's a question here that is in relation how to avoid being left out in a group of Westerners who talk about their childhood memories or their culture. How do I break through in that situation? So I don't know, Sue or Justine, whether you have any thoughts around that question?
From my experience, it shows genuine interest, and I know that it is awkward sometimes to listen to something that is different from your culture. But if you're interested to be integrated, asking some questions and finding out how things work, it's a good thing to learn about the New Zealand culture. And when you're genuine and respectful during the discussion and listening, receptive, at times you can also contribute about your childhood and some differences in how upbringing is like in your country or native country or your culture. So that becomes a sharing opportunity. I always think that if you find it awkward, it's a good time to be inquisitive about other people's cultural ways, how they what they're expected in terms of education. So just like what Justine has been sharing, the success story of childhood upbringing within an Asian family, children are expected to be successful, to be competent, and we're not expected to know about to join our sport activity. We're expected to do our homework, complete everything, and have good achievements and results. So success is measured differently. So those are things that it opens a window of opportunity to learn from others and share your culture and your upbringing that helps other people to understand you. I think it's a great opportunity.
Thank you. I have a question here for Justine. Justine, how did you direct yourself as a self-independent, self-directed PhD student, as this questioner did experience the same issue while doing her research, this is Maya speaking, in postgraduate studies. Coming from an Asian culture that is Nepal, where we are given clear directives, it was frustrating when you don't know what to do. So how did you learn to self-direct yourself, become more independent?
First of all, I want to let you know that, Maya, that it takes time. So please do not feel too much pressure that you need to quickly integrate it and to quickly adjust it to New Zealand society. The culture is different, so it takes time. That is my first advice. And secondly, to be a person who is self-independent and self-directed, my strategy was thinking about the point that I'm good at. So I'm a person who believes that everyone has their own potential and ability and skills, and thinking about the point that you're really good at. For example, if you're good at cooking, why don't you invite other friends and share and do some cooking and sharing food together? Or if you're good at drawing, and why don't you draw for draw a photo and make a postcard and share to other colleagues or friends? So starting from the point that you are good at is the key. So, and then you can gain confidence. Once you have a confidence, you can have a much more open mindset to try new things. So I believe that, Maya, you have a potential in certain area. So starting from that point, and while you try that kind of things, and if you struggled, I'm really happy if you can contact me and ask me the other question. Yeah. So that was my advice. And also, I want to add a point to Sue. So when people talk about their childhood, and if you don't understand, and my advice was really similar to Sue's advice. Everybody has a childhood, so think about what is the difference between their experience and your experience, and then you can keep the topic, and then raise a question like, do you know in Korea or in your home country we do this way, and people might be interested in ask question to you. So yeah, when people talk about the
We have also here a question or a statement. I think that Asians tend to be passive communicators instead of assertive ones. Any suggestions for international students to be more confident and active? Thank you.
This is a very interesting question because I always reflected when I first came as well, more passive. And whenever my manager asked me for opinions, I always felt that in Malaysia that usually the opinions are left to the managers to discuss, and we get directive from whatever instructions that are given. So we hardly consulted, and so quite passive in the way we don't contribute actively and not confident. But again, as a person who have been practicing this for a while, it takes time. It really takes you a bit of confidence to join in and provide some opinion. And for me, having a group of Asian staff working with me, I give them every opportunity to walk in, ask questions, and slowly they build their confidence. And I realized that they are asking me a lot more questions and having more opinion. So from my perspective, it's about practicing it with a group of people, build your confidence over time. It doesn't happen overnight, but confidence with sharing your opinion or being active in a conversation, which is what Chris was always said earlier, is that people Western, oh, sorry, not Chris, but Jason was talking about Westerners tends to sometimes disagree, even though it's not a disagreement. They are more active in their communication. So by integrating is about starting to practice what are the questions you want to ask, and once you try it out, you start to build your confidence, and I've experienced that myself, and I now actively challenge views and also join in with conversation. So practice make perfect. It does take time, but be aware, like Jason was talking about, don't take disagreement personally, but join in and have that discussion, feedback, and grow your confidence, just like what Justin been doing. Grow her confidence and get out of your egg shell and build that ability to not be aggressive communicator, but communicate with confidence.
I want to add one more point. Is it okay, Chris?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So I want to recommend you to use the service that the university or the institution that you are belong to. So in my case, during my first year, as I told you before, I was really shy and I was really intimidated. But I searched university service and I found that there is a language therapist. So I contacted her and shared my struggles. So every once a week, I met her and talk about my study. And also I have asked her about a New Zealand system or educational system, political system, all the things that I had curious. So that was really secure and pleasant environment. So I did not worry about the grammar or expression. So during the meeting with her, like 1 or 2, more than 1 year, yeah, that was really helpful. So I strongly recommend you to search whether your university or institution that you belong to provide any like that kind of service. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Justine. And in terms of developing confidence and being assertive, we need to recognize too that people do have different personalities, you know, and it doesn't matter which culture they're from. So some people will be more shy and some people will not be as social, but that's okay. You can just spend time just with other people who will help give you, if you do things, participate in groups, join clubs, and have friends who might be a little bit more social. They can support you in connecting with others. Also, Jason mentioned that New Zealand students, people are more happy to express their opinions or give a bit of disagreement. So you just have to believe that and accept that that is the case, firstly. Secondly, observe the way in which, say, a local student is expressing their opinion or politely disagreeing, and then copy that behavior and just see how they do it, and just do it. I think Justine talked about she came to a point when she had to, in the end, state how she was feeling and choose to take those small steps. And so, you know, you can choose to take those small steps as well. So stereotyping is an interesting and it's so easy for us to stereotype, and I don't know whether any of the speakers would like to talk about maybe the negative side of stereotyping, or how students might wish to deal with stereotyping or prejudice if they feel that they're either being stereotyped, or whether they might feel that they are the victims of prejudice. Any thoughts there?
I have a couple of thoughts, just quickly, on the stereotyping, just based on my own experience, which is when I was overseas, I was often people thought I was an American, or they thought I was I was from Britain, or maybe I was an Australian, and so I was always very sensitive at the beginning when people would say, "Oh, Megwaran," or "You're a," or even just being known as a Waigwaran. And it took me a while to, I guess, think about it from how other people would see me, and then to be able to engage in conversations where that was really just a starting point because the stereotyping is a very simplistic way I think of it, is that people always have to simplify. If people are simplifying in negative ways, then that's discrimination, and we should always you know, raise questions about that and, you know, stand up for our rights. But if people are simplifying, they have to do that so that they have a basis for the start of a conversation. And then it's really an opportunity to move from there. So it can be quite hurtful, and it can be wrong, but it's really up to the person to engage with people to show a broader, more in-depth person. And I also think, from my own experience as a New Zealander, growing up in the 80s, New Zealand has changed very, very quickly. And I think that's a great thing. But I also think that many New Zealanders are still on a steep learning curve. And it's an opportunity for many people here to help us along that steep learning curve.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I really like that we do need some simplification, I think, just to help us to make sense of cultural differences. It is a balancing act. We can easily overgeneralize. We can think in terms of stereotypes, but at the same time, generalizations can help us to make sense of cultural differences and to adjust to a new environment. So I just have a question here from Mia Shin, and so I'd just like to refer to the last statement that you make. It says, "I love China and New Zealand," and I think that's great, because I think in adjusting to a new culture, there's something that's called double engagement. And what that means is that students who doubly engage, or who they try to integrate, are students who try and affirm and celebrate their home culture and their heritage culture, while at the same time trying to participate and get involved in the new culture. So if you're trying to do that, and it's going to be probably a roller coaster experience, then I would encourage you to keep doing that, okay? So that's to celebrate, if you're from China, to celebrate and affirm your Chineseness, while at the same time engaging and trying to participate in the local culture. You do not need to give up your Chineseness. That's not actually a word, but I'm just using it for this context. But you don't need to give it up. You celebrate your home culture. At the same time, you try to positively engage in the new culture. So one of the panelists would like to just add to, or just comment in relation to Maya Shin's other comments in terms of negative press and media in relation to their home country, how they might wish to process those feelings.
I can make a quick comment.
Thanks, Jason.
And so, you know, I hear what you're saying, and I have had similar feelings sometimes when I read some of the press when I'm in China, and you know, this is, I guess, the distinction between politics and people, and so I guess it's about acknowledging that there's politics. And sometimes politics can be quite hurtful if we take it personally. But I'd also say that, you know, that's the politics level in the media about countries, but that there's an opportunity in New Zealand, and I think there still is, not everywhere, there is a good community where people will give everybody a fair go. And so, you know, the whole media thing about politics, and you know, we do it to ourselves as well, and how someone will talk about a politician, or how we talk about sort of divisive political issues, is don't take that personally as a comment about the people. That's politics versus society and the community, and so if you talk to people, I think your experience would be different.
Thank you. I have here, I have a real case to share and ask. I worked in a Kiwi social enterprise, which has 5 businesses, including a cafe. One day my Kiwi colleague asked me, "Is that your culture to let infants pee in the basin?" The mum apologized. Maybe, yes, the mum apologized. Maybe she is Chinese or Korean. How might I respond to that kind of attitude? So I'm the one of 2 Chinese surrounded by Kiwis and South Africans, which I'm guessing are South African migrants. So, so it's not really a polite or respectful question. How might you provide advice in terms of responding? Justine or Sue, any thoughts there?
This is really interesting. As a cultural advisor in Waitemata, I also get asked questions around behaviors, particularly around patients spitting in the basin in a shared patient room, and people ask, "Is that your culture to spit in the basin?" Which it seems to be rude. So again, it's about for some culture, it is behavior that's acceptable, for others are not. But if you're the person being asked and you believe that's not part of your culture, you can always respond politely to your colleagues to say that it's not practiced in our culture. And I'm not sure what culture is the mum from. So you can always respond with explaining and to the question politely. For me, is when I was asked why patients were spitting in the basin. Yeah, I understand that for some Chinese culture, not everyone, we should not stereotype people. That is a healthy way to spit out, but it's about policies and rules that my advice to the ward staff is to put a policy in different languages to explain to people if you want to spit, go into the toilet area so that a patient doesn't feel offended. So there are things how you can manage that. If it's something you know, you could explain why those behaviors are happening. We can't stop someone else from doing something, but you can always put a policy in place if it is offensive. And I would politely respond to my colleagues about what I know about that culture behavior and what does it mean. So don't take offense when people are asking you that, but explain the knowledge and help people to understand different cultural ways and whether those behaviors are seen positively in that culture or also seen negatively if you're aware of it. But if it's something that you don't know about, you can always say, I'm not sure whether it's a cultural way or behavior that's acceptable. For my culture, we would not allow or have our baby pee in the basin. So those are things that I would consider what is appropriate to respond to. Hope that's helpful.
So that is very helpful, thank you. And you know, we just have the sense that you really are speaking from the wisdom of experience, and so we do appreciate that. And I think it's just important to acknowledge that sometimes people can say things that are helpful. It's not helpful, that are hurtful.
Yes.
It's important to acknowledge that. And I'm going to share a cliche, which is an overused expression, that is that a problem shared is a problem halved. So if you're feeling hurt and you're feeling upset by something someone has said, just really encourage you to talk to someone else, someone you trust or a friend, and just talk it through, and just really bring it to their attention. So it's nice to have a listening ear, and then you can, in a sense, share that issue with someone else, and they probably will offer some useful advice.